Welcome to r/Tales from Your Server. It's the place where waiters share awesome stories about their guests. And today's first story is Sweet Poetic Karma for 4 whiny preteens who didn't like their table. About a year ago, I remember the restaurant I used to work in, a notable sports bar, was playing a very important football match. Arguably the most important of the season. 2 months prior to the match, we were getting calls for reservations, and by the final week, we had every table booked. Now, something you should know about our restaurant is that it's set up quite oddly. Some tables have a better view of our TVs, whereas others don't. That's compensated somewhat by the availability of 2 pull-down projector screens. Anyway, this particular story relates to such a table. If you imagine walking into this restaurant, the table is facing horizontally to the nearest TV. So, without the projector screen, there would be 2 guests with their backs to the action. Then arrives the guests. Everything seems to be going fine. They arrive early, and I take them to their table. The lead of the group, let's call him Chad, obviously isn't that much impressed. Chad, how the F are we supposed to watch the TV? Frankly, I'm a little bit taken aback by his language, but given it's game day and it's understandably frustrating, from his point of view he probably isn't aware of the projector screen. Me, well we do. That's when he interrupts. Chad, can we sit over there? He's pointing to an 8-seater booth. I know why. It's because it has arguably the best view of our biggest TV. Nevertheless, his is a 4-man booking, and that 8-seater is obviously already booked. Me, that table is booked, as is every other, and again with another interruption. Chad, well effing put someone else here, we want to sit there. Bearing in mind his 3 other mates are silent throughout, in retrospect they are all arguably so much more polite than this bag of pus. Me, well that wouldn't be fair now would it? Now if you let me explain. Chad, no F this and F you, I'll take my money elsewhere, cancel my booking. I very nearly laughed at that last bit, because I know why he made such a big deal about the larger table now. I would later find out that this particular cretin is stinking rich. He has daddy's money. But oh well, 1 booking canceled. No sweat. The 3 boys leave led by the walking testicle. That's when the next group of customers really turns the situation well around. Customer, I'm sorry, I couldn't help but overhear that they're canceling their booking. We haven't booked and we're 4 persons. Can we have their table instead? This is exactly why 1 canceled booking for me on a busy day like this is no sweat. 1 person's trash is another person's treasure, so to speak. I happily sit the 4 men down, and the guys actually cheer when I bring the projector down. That's when it happens. Testicles McD face rounds the corner and spots the projector. He re-enters the queue for tables and waits his turn. By the time he's up front, I can barely hide my grin. Chad, so we changed our mind. Meaning he changed his mind and now wants the table now he realizes that nowhere else in the city has vacancy. Me, I'm afraid your table's already been given away. Chad, but we reserved. Me, yeah, and you also communicated to me just now that you wish to cancel. I'm afraid your table was already given away. Chad, you know, that's really a bad business practice. You should honor your commitments to reservations. Me, as long as the reserving party wishes to remain, which you did not communicate to me at all. I then leave the host stand and tend to that table. All the while, Chad is giving me a look that I can only describe as I effed up, but internally I'm gonna make sure this is all your fault. Sweet, sweet karma. The second story is, I was wrongfully terminated from the god-awful restaurant I was working at. Instead of just sucking it up and moving on, I took action. I reported them to the State Labor Commissioner's office and got to speak directly to my former company's director of HR. This SH Hole company I worked for less than 2 months fired me on Sunday. The really crappy part about it is that I found out from a coworker, not even my boss. We have the ability to release our shifts on hot schedules, so I released my Sunday morning shift to one of our newer servers. I spoke directly to my boss about the shift being picked up, which he told me he would approve in hot schedules. So Sunday rolls around, I'm assuming everything is all good, and then yesterday my coworker texts me, asking why I didn't show up for my shift on Sunday. I was confused, so I went to check hot schedules to see if there was a message I had missed, to find I had been removed from the entire week's schedule. I call the restaurant to figure out what was going on. My manager then tells me over the phone that I had been terminated as of yesterday. The server who had picked up my shift was fresh out of training and had to pass a final test in order to be on his own. Well, he didn't pass and wasn't allowed to work my shift on Sunday. Nobody effing told me. Nobody called me on Sunday to ask where I was. Nobody reached out to me to let me know my shift was no longer covered. They just fired me and didn't tell me. Honestly, I was so beyond done with this place, I really didn't care. This was my second job anyway. This restaurant forces its employees to work 8+ hour shifts with no break, forces us to work doubles, 14 to 16 hour lunch and dinner shifts, and will work us 15 to 16 days in a row with no day off. About 20-ish servers were complaining about writing to HR specifically about the break issue, which is illegal, because some of them weren't getting a lunch, even on a 14-hour workday. They've been denied when asking for a day off and guilted into working double shifts in fear of being retaliated against. When I got fired, I realized that this was my opportunity. It obviously doesn't affect me anymore, but I'm tired of employers thinking they can abuse their staff with no recourse. I contacted my state's labor commissioner's office and was really surprised that in the same day I filed a complaint, they sent a letter to the GM, the company's attorney, and the HR department, informing them that they will be conducting an audit of their time clock system. I'm not sure what happens next, but my former employer will undoubtedly be at fault of not providing breaks when they're supposed to. Some of the staff also has hard evidence of time clock slips without a break in an 8-hour period, which I will be submitting on their behalf to the commissioner's office. Additionally, I took it upon myself to call the corporate office and ask to speak to someone in HR. When I mentioned that I'd already filed a complaint through the state commissioner's office, I guess that sparked fire under somebody's A, because I received a phone call from the director of HR himself. I told him everything. I told him the employees are scared to speak up because our managers are little D's who like to retaliate. I told him about how I was fired with no warning and no reason. Unfortunately, I work in an at-will state, so there is no legal recourse that can follow, but it's just effed up. He was really shocked and surprised to know about everything going on and gave me his personal number to give out to my former coworkers to contact him directly. He said he will be having an in-person store meeting and speaking with each team member personally to see what's happening. He apologized for the way I was let go and admitted my managers handled it extremely wrong. I held nothing back during this conversation, and although I was polite and respectful, I explained that he had angry staff on the verge of leaving due to his company's unethical practices. He agreed with me and was profoundly apologetic. I'm not sure what is going to come of this, but I'll most likely be getting an earful from my previous coworkers about what's to come. I hope this company and the labor board holds my managers accountable for their actions and enforces a stricter break policy. This lesson has taught me that you have a voice in this world, so use it. So many of us are afraid of speaking up in fear of losing our job or being retaliated against. You don't know what will happen until you do something. I wish I had spoke up sooner, but I'm happy this company is actually taking accountability and doing something about it. Don't be afraid of your employers. Don't let people abuse you. If you have to ruffle some feathers, ruffle them hard. The third story is, rich people are something else. Names changed. So I had been working at this fine dining gig for a year or so, in a new city, and it was a mixed bag. This was a classic restaurant situation. The staff did coke together on the regular, drinking a box of wine over 2 shifts was totally normal, and the owner was a character. Conversely, you could make a cool $1,000 in a weekend, $1,400 if it were New Year's Eve, so, you know, the usual for fine dining. Whatever, I loved it. Until my paycheck bounced, but that's a story for another day. This is the story of hosting a private supper club for something like $300 a head. They brought almost $20,000 in wine. We got about a quarter of that at the end. Fun fact, $600 wine isn't that much better than $20 wine. Live and learn. I did the private tasting with the chef. After a ton of shellfish and foie gras, had an allergic reaction to the shellfish. All was well. Everyone seemed normal and polite, if, well, you know, ludicrously rich. The setup they decided on was past apps, then 5 courses, culminating in an effing phenomenal foie gras dessert. Yum. The private tasting was 10 people. The actual party was for 50 plus. Did they all show? Nope. Do we care? Nope. Got that SH on deposit with AutoGrad at 15%, with the expectation that they tip on top of that. Yeet. So the actual party begins. I'm casually passing apps during the champagne bit, mostly wondering when I can justify a smoke and wine break with the GM, when there's a bit of a ruckus. Someone dropped a champagne flute. Great. I drop my empty board in the kitchen and run to grab a dustpan. Chef yells at me. Whatever. I arrive with my dustpan and go to clean up the glass like a normal person. And one of the men begins fussing immediately. There's glass in my shoes. I cannot believe this. His wife responds, let the staff do their effing job, Tim. Your shoes will be fine. I clean up the glass. Great. Okay, time for a cigarette. As I'm heading into the kitchen and passing my coworkers, I hear a further commotion. Great. Tim has glass in his shoes, and this will surely cause his death. Okay, I'm still having my cigarette. F you, Tim. Nope. One of these incredibly elderly men had dropped the glass because he was having a heart attack. Roughly 10 people begin caring for him. They ask for a box of seltzer to put his feet up. His wife says, oh, this happens sometimes. No SH, Susan, he's effing 85 years old. Chef and Sue call 911. Old man is chilling on a banquet with his feet up, you know, in a state of cardiomyopathy. Meanwhile, everyone else has returned to drinking champagne and asking if there's any more of those adorable little Wagyu beef apps coming soon. The ambulance arrives. The paramedics show up. Again, everyone in the party is just chilling with their champagne, and we're all still opening bottles and dropping apps and, I don't know, just screaming internally and waiting for the world's most satisfying cigarette. The old man is insisting that he's fine and can stay. The paramedics are like, no, you're like dying. So they bundle him into the ambulance, and we think, okay, fine, we can get the rest of this effing party over with. And then his wife comes back. Hey, so sorry, but Harold didn't get the first oyster course, and he was really excited for it. So the ambulance waits while Chef packs an oyster course into a takeaway box, and his wife ferries it dutifully back to him and they leave. So the rest of the party goes on. All is reasonably well. At the end, they toast to Harold, who may or may not be dead. They leave us an F-ton of wine. The last story is, she cried over eggs. So I own a breakfast restaurant. I've served and bartended for over a decade, and we bought a restaurant about 2 years ago now, and it's going really well, and for the most part, people are lovely. We have a lot of dedicated regulars, and I like to know them by name and memorize their order. I insist that the servers also do this because it keeps them coming back and keeps good word of mouth in the neighborhood. On the weekends, as our restaurant is a breakfast/lunch diner, only open until 2 p.m., we have a huge brunch crowd. Basically all day Saturday and Sunday, we are packed with a line at the door. We had these two ladies who would come in at least 3 times a week. I knew their names and orders, and they would come in on the weekends as well as weekdays and sit for a good couple of hours, regardless of how busy. But they were nice ladies and came in a lot. Their orders were a little more complicated than most. Over medium eggs, no spice on their home fries. Sometimes they wanted a gluten-free English muffin, but sometimes they wanted tomatoes instead of their toast. And they liked their bacon basically cremated, but it couldn't crack on the way to the table. And they always commented about how no other restaurant in town could make their breakfast just as they liked it, except us. Great! So yeah, they were picky, they drank copious amounts of our bottomless coffee, and it was all fine, because like I said, they were nice ladies and they came in a lot. This one weekend we were crazy busy. An article had come out praising our restaurant in the local paper, and it was a zoo. We have only 3 guys in the back, 2 small fryers, and sometimes it's tough to keep up. If the kitchen is a bit backed up, we always let our customers know, so they know what they are getting into. Like if the food is going to be 30 minutes, heaven forbid. These ladies came in on this day, of course, eventually got seated, and we kept the coffee and pleasant chit-chat going. Now, when the regulars get seated, we usually just punch in their order because it doesn't usually change, and if it is, they usually let us know right when they sit down, so they get their meals relatively quickly. The ladies' meals come out, exactly as it has every other time they come in, but I guess today was different for them. The one lady tells me she doesn't think her eggs are over medium plus and are just over medium. She demands I take those eggs back to the kitchen to go back on the grill for a few more seconds. I tell her that we can't actually do that, because you can't take food from a table back to the kitchen, but I would tell the cooks and they would get some new eggs for her as soon as possible. I tell her that they won't come right away, but the kitchen knows and are a bit behind, so it'd probably be 15 minutes or less. She waves me off and goes, okay, it's fine, motioning to her breakfast. I figured she meant she was just gonna eat the eggs on her plate, and through their time at the table I saw she was eating, so I figured yeah, she's fine, great. The other eggs came out, she didn't want them then. Okay, whatever. I clear their plates and give them the bills. They come up to the front counter, and that is when they weren't such nice ladies anymore. They proceeded to yell at me at the front about how awful I've treated such loyal customers, how she barely ate anything. Her choice, man, and was hungry, wasn't paying her bill. The egg complainer is literally shaking mad and starts to cry. Tears, about how I've ruined her day and they are never coming back. She threw a $20 bill in my face, and obviously this ticked me off, and they clearly were never coming back, and I can't help myself sometimes. Knowing I can't be fired, So I straight up told her, Marge, these were eggs. You don't cry over eggs. Get it together. And then they stormed out. They've never been back, and to be honest, we don't miss them one bit. Thank you for watching. Bye.